The Haunting of Mist Island. Chapter 2. The Descent into Fear. During their search, one of the team members goes missing. Hours later, they're found in one of the old cells, chained up and muttering incoherently. They look as though they've been there for years, even though they were only missing for a few hours. This discovery sends shockwaves through the group, shaking their trust in reality. The missing member babbles about the island feeding on their minds, but no one wants to believe it yet. James pushes deeper into the hospital, discovering more about the twisted experiments that took place here decades ago. He learns that the patients were subjected to brutal mind control experiments that were designed to tap into psychic powers. One particular patient, a man with extraordinary abilities, became the source of the island's dark energy. He remains on the island, waiting to ensnare new victims. James becomes increasingly convinced that his brother Alex was part of these experiments and is still alive, trapped somewhere on the island. His sanity begins to falter, and he starts seeing Alex everywhere, hearing his voice in the walls and feeling his presence guiding him. Emily tries to help, but the more she tries to pull James back to reality, the more the island distorts her own perceptions. She, too, starts seeing visions from her past horrors that reflect her deepest fears. As night falls, James has another vision of Alex, this time more vivid and real than before. Alex urges him to go deeper into the hospital, into the basement, where the darkest secrets lie. James feels torn between his need to follow his brother and the fear that what he might find could destroy him. James and the team make the harrowing decision to descend into the basement. As they move deeper into the bowels of the hospital, they find a blood-stained door with Alex's name written on it. Behind it, something stirs as James reaches for the handle. A voice whispers his name. "James, you have to find me." James's heart was pounding in his ears. The door was wide open. The shadowy figure had vanished, but the weight of its presence still suffocated the room. He turned toward Emily, who was pale, clutching her chest. Dr. Harlow was shaking, staring blankly at the door as if frozen in place. "We need to leave," Emily hissed, her voice sharp and desperate, but James couldn't move. His eyes were fixed on the far corner, where those haunting eyes had been watching him. Were they still there? A distant, eerie noise echoed down the corridor. Outside the door, a dragging sound, slow and deliberate. It was getting closer. Something was coming for them. "We have to go now." Emily grabbed James by the arm, yanking him toward the exit. But just as they were about to step into the hallway, a blinding light flashed, and a deafening roar echoed through the building. The floor beneath them shuddered, and then, impossibly, the entire hospital seemed to shift, like the island itself was alive, shifting, breathing. The walls warped and groaned. The mist from outside began seeping through the cracks in the walls, swirling in unnatural patterns. Drive. Harlow stumbled forward, eyes wide, muttering under his breath. "It's too late, we woke it up." "What are you talking about?" James snapped, but before he could demand more, the dragging sound grew louder. Right outside the door now, a shadow slithered through the hallway, something massive but formless, its tendrils reaching out and scraping the walls. It was searching for them. Suddenly, Dr. Harlow bolted. "We're trapped. There's no way out." His voice cracked with fear as he disappeared down a side corridor. Emily shouted after him, but it was too late. His footsteps faded, swallowed by the growing storm of whispers and shifting shadows. "We have to follow him," James said, but deep down, he knew it didn't matter. There was no safety left in this place. The island was coming alive around them, the dark energy that had been dormant for so long now fully awakened. They raced down the hallway, the mist curling around their ankles, the shadows twisting in ways that defied reality. As they turned a corner, the air seemed to thicken. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat, and the floor beneath them felt like it was sinking into the earth itself. The hospital's labyrinthine corridors stretched endlessly, warping into a nightmare. They passed doors that led to rooms where the lights flickered, revealing ghostly figures standing motionless inside. Their faces were blank, their eyes hollow like Alex's, staring at nothing and everything. Suddenly, James heard a familiar voice. "Alex." James, the whisper cut through the chaos. It was faint but unmistakable. "Find me." Without thinking, James turned toward the sound, ignoring Emily's shouts. He pushed through another set of doors and stumbled into a large, dimly lit room. The air was colder here, so cold that every breath felt like ice in his lungs. In the center of the room, a metal gurney lay covered in dust and dark stains, and there, standing just beyond it, was Alex, his brother, looking just as he had the day he disappeared except for his eyes. They were black voids, empty yet filled with something James couldn't understand. Alex James's voice was barely a whisper. "What happened to you?" Alex didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his head tilted slightly, as if listening to something far away. "You should never have come here," he said, his voice distant, mechanical. "It's too late for me, too late for you." Suddenly, the walls shook again, more violently this time. The ceiling cracked, chunks of plaster raining down around them. Emily burst into the room, her eyes wild with terror. "James, we have to leave. This place, it's collapsing." But James couldn't move. His feet were rooted to the ground, his mind spinning. "Alex, come with us. We can still..." Before he could finish, Alex's body began to distort, his form twisting unnaturally. His skin seemed to stretch and tear, revealing something underneath, something dark, pulsing, and alive. James stumbled back in horror. Emily screamed, grabbing James by the arm. "That's not Alex. We have to go." Just as they turned to flee, the room exploded into chaos. The walls crumbled, and the floor beneath them gave way. They fell, tumbling through darkness, the wind howling in their ears as they plummeted into the unknown. They landed with a painful thud in what seemed like a cavern beneath the hospital. The air was thick with the stench of decay. When James opened his eyes, he saw they were surrounded by hundreds of figures, pale, lifeless bodies, standing motionless in the shadows. Their eyes were all the same, black, hollow voids, just like Alex. Where are we?" Emily stammered, backing up against the wall. A low, guttural voice echoed from the depths of the cavern. "Welcome home, James." James's blood ran cold. He turned slowly, and standing before him, at the center of the grotesque crowd, was Alex, or what was left of him. His body was a twisted, monstrous version of itself, barely human anymore. "You never understood," Alex growled, his voice deep and distorted. "The island, it's not a place. It's a living thing, and now you're part of it." The ground beneath them trembled again, but this time it wasn't the hospital collapsing, it was the island, devouring everything in its path. James screamed, but no sound came out. His vision blurred, and the last thing he saw was the monstrous form of his brother stretching toward him with inhuman hands, pulling him into the darkness. As the island consumed everything, the world went black. Suddenly, James opened his eyes. He was back in the hospital, standing at the front entrance. The doors were wide open, sunlight streaming in. Everything looked normal. He glanced around, confused. Emily was next to him, breathing heavily. "James, what just happened?" But before James could answer, his reflection in the glass door caught his eye and his blood froze. His eyes, they were black, hollow, just like Alex's. Don't forget to follow and subscribe for more content like this. Curse of the Sea wishes you a good night.